Good evening. My name is John Henry, and I'm an alcoholic. In this Code Blue Big Book Action and Study seminar, we're going to go through the first 164 pages of the Big Book, the recovery section, and we're going to do the work that the first 100 people who recovered said we have to do to overcome this hopeless condition of mind and body. I borrow heavily from the Golden Slippers, from Joe and Charlie, from Clancy, and from all of the giants who have gone before me. Now, I don't claim to be any big book guru or any kind of top 10 spiritualist. I'm just a simple drunk. I was almost dead from the disease. When I finally became willing to do the action in our book, I was able to recover and have a pretty good life. So I'm hoping that there's 2s and 3s and 4s of you listening to this together. You're going to need a big book. I like the large print big book, highlighter and pen. I'm going to try to get some of the paperwork that I've got online. And please bring your willingness. Please bring your willingness and your open mind. And as you're going to see, we open every session with the set-aside prayer so that we may be more open to receiving this information. Thanks for listening. All right. Welcome, everybody. So last week, we ran out of time again. I didn't get to talk about this little sheet of paper that everybody got. So real briefly, I'll talk about what is the solution, which was the chapter that we read last week. And basically, what this paper shows us is that when new members come into these rooms, right, the new members are going to be using 2 powers to recover. One is the power of the fellowship, right? So those are the meetings, going to Perkins, going to movies, and doing stuff. And the other is the power of the vital spiritual experience. So what the older members do is they support the newer member, but they're going to help that newer member to believe. They're going to help that newer member become willing, and they're going to help that newer member to take the actions necessary to have that vital spiritual experience. And once the simple kit of spiritual tools it revolutionizes our whole attitude toward life, toward our fellows, and towards God's universe. So then what happens is it's a personality change sufficient to recover from alcoholism, and that's what the solution is. So, real quick, when I the first time I went to Code Blue, I'd been sober 6 months, but I wasn't working the steps. And I was in really bad shape. I was blowing up at work. I couldn't control my emotional nature. Things weren't going. I was full of fear. I was very angry. And I was obsessing about drinking and using every day, right? So I went to Code Blue, and I started to get a little bit better. But I didn't have a sponsor, right? I had the older members who were running Code Blue, but I didn't have a sponsor. About week 6 or week 7, they said, "Does anybody here not have a sponsor?" And I was dumb enough to raise my hand, and they noticed that. It was a group about the size of this, and when the meeting was over, I ran out of the building, and I told you that this guy chased me down, and he brought me back into the building. And he said, and I thought, oh, this guy's going to be my sponsor, right? But no, he pointed to this kid and he said, "This is Paris. Paris is going to be your sponsor." So I'm looking at this kid, right? And he's 25 years younger than me. So I'd been sober a little over 7 months, and I look at this kid and I say, "Well, how long have you been sober?" And he says, "Well, I've been sober about 7 months." And I'm thinking, what? So I got this guy 7 months, and I was a mess, and I didn't know then what I know now. He came into these rooms, he got real lucky, he got a good sponsor who ran him through the steps right away. He had the vital spiritual experience and he had recovered, right? So he was actually an older member of AA, right? Because he had done the work and recovered, and I was still the new member because I hadn't done a damn thing. Right? So this guy did help me through steps 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and so on. And it actually worked. So, an older member, that's just simply somebody that's done the work, that's had the experience, and wants to help other people. So that's kind of how this whole thing works. Now, We got a lot to cover today. So, did anybody do any of their assignments? Anybody? Right here? Couple? Okay. I just got time for a couple. So, since you're close to me, if you don't mind, do you want to just start with the God is and the God isn't thing?
Sure. God is forgiving, loving, truthful, righteous, real, a good teacher, caring.
Okay.
God isn't spiteful, mean, judgmental, hateful.
Okay, so I'm not going to do it, but what they did, because I was the first one that they called on, and I read my list, right? And I didn't really have a God that I was praying to or anything, so the guy running it took my list and he went, whoosh, he tore it in half, he gave me the God is part and said, this is who you're going to start to ask help for, what you wrote down on the God is. And he threw away the part that the God isn't, right? So when you make these lists, what you would like God to be, that's going to be what we're going to start with. That's going to be the beginning of what we can pray to, particularly if you have a problem with a higher power, right? So what we're going to do is once we have these things under God is, we are then going to conduct our life as if this is what God is, and we're going to look for some results and see if it works. So are you willing then to, did you talk to some people about how they found their higher power?
Yeah.
Do you want to just really briefly, a few of those? Putting you on the spot.
Yeah, no, that's all right. One of them was not a believer in God, Christ, and she knew that she knew that there was something else out there, but just couldn't put her finger on it. And her favorite, how can I do this without being judgmental? I'm so judgmental. That's one of her little, okay, Bob the Minion, you know, from the Minions.
Yep.
That was her, something that just like made her happy, made her smile, got her, you know, herself outside of herself, I guess, so to speak. And so that was kind of, you know, when she started, because at first I'm like, really? No. But then when she started to explain it to me, that was really cool. I got to see a different perspective from somebody else. And yeah, and then there was just another person who had faith in God and then lost it because of her alcoholism. And it took her a while to sort through, and so she just kind of, it took her a while to come full circle again, let's just put it to you that way, and I'll just leave those two examples.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Just like one or two things you're grateful for?
Grandkids and nature, and then of course I had to add to it at the bottom being sober.
Hey, all right.
Yeah.
Okay. Very good. All right. So, do you want to just do yours real quick? A couple, did you say you had a few?
Which one?
Why don't you do the God is and the God isn't if you have that?
God is
What were we
understanding,
supposed to do
forgiving,
on the bottom?
loving.
Pardon?
What were we supposed to do other than these two?
Okay. God isn't?
Something that
Hateful, vengeful. I wrote it down and I left it in my car.
It's all right.
Those are the ones I can remember. There's a couple more. But
Okay. Cool. Yeah, and I mean, again, so what we're going to do is we're going to get rid of the God isn't part and we're going to keep that God is part. And that's what we're going to start with. Do you have just a couple things that you were grateful for? Just like two things you can...
understanding wife, sobriety, 12 steps, sponsor family, that's sunset, sunrise, chocolate, coffee.
Cool. Hey man, that's
Everything I like.
very good. All right. Did anybody else talk to somebody about how they found their higher power that they want to talk about real quick? Okay.
I have one.
Yeah, go ahead. Fantastic.
This is a man of science, and he's got a very analytical science
Yeah.
kind of mind that he didn't believe in God traditionally like most people do. But he said he started to just believe that there was a power greater than him that doesn't control his efforts, but controls the outcome of his efforts. And that's kind of where he's at right now.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay. All right. we got a lot to read, so I'm just going to really quickly. I talked to one person who, this guy says that I kept him sober throughout the 90s because he kept seeing me come into meetings relapsed and in horrible condition. He told me that, he said that he's one of the board members here now. He said that good orderly direction. He had a sponsor that had him get up and make his bed, asked him to start praying in the morning, asked him to show up to work on time, asked him to go to a meeting every night. And so he said by doing good orderly direction, God, it kind of transpired for him, right? Another person told me that it was through the working of the steps they discovered their higher power, and also by following the suggestions of the sponsor, right? And another guy said he had to practice praying because he didn't know what he was doing. And he acted as if, right? He acted as if God was real. He didn't really believe in it, but he conducted himself as if God was real, and it was those good things. And eventually he came to believe, right? So there's many different ways. And I had another guy that said he had a white light experience, and then my sister who said that she believed in the spirit of nature. So just a couple things I'm grateful for, man. I got a nice place to live. I can sleep at night. I don't know about you guys, man, but I did not sleep. I've got friends. I didn't have any friends when I came in here. I've got a program that shows me how to live my life, and I really didn't like my family before I sobered up, but now I realize I have really wonderful brothers and sisters. So just a few things. So all right, so let us go to, this is one of my favorite chapters, by the way, more about alcoholism. I think what Bill is doing here, right, we saw what the problem was in the doctor's opinion. We read Bill's story, right, and then we saw what the solution was. More about alcoholism, Bill is kind of showing us what's going to happen to us if we don't accept a spiritual solution. And every time, and I got to tell you guys, every now and again a thought crosses my mind. It says, am I really an alcoholic? The evidence is right there, right? 9 treatments, everything else. But whenever that goes through my head, I can always just open up and read a few passages more about alcoholism, and it removes all doubt because I see so many similarities to my own situation. So let us go to chapter 3, page 30. Chapter 3, page 30. So, can somebody, before I start though, can somebody read step 2 up there?
Came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity.
Okay, came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity, right? So just before we get started, right, that step indicates that we're insane. And many people coming into these rooms get highly offended by that statement, right? And they say, hey man, I do some crazy things when I'm drunk, but I remember what I did, so I'm not insane. Or they say, when I did those crazy things, I was blacked out, right? So I am not insane, right? And that's not what they mean. They're not referring to the stupid things we do when we're drunk. Alcohol lowers the inhibitions of everybody, so everybody's going to do stupid things. So let's look, borrowing from Joe and Charlie, we're going to look up sanity in the dictionary. And what sanity means, it means wholeness of mind or completeness of mind, right? That if we're sane, we can see the truth, we make decisions based on the truth, and generally things come out okay. Now, an insane mind is less than whole, right? That means that we can't always see the truth. And when we make a decision based upon a lie, right, things can get pretty bad. Now, insane doesn't mean we're crazy, right? Crazy means that we've lost more than half our marbles and they got to lock us up for our safety and other people's safety, right? Insane simply means that we're less than whole. And the way Joe and Charlie described it, they say if you've got a piece of pie with 10 pieces and you give away one piece, you're 80% whole. You give away another piece and you still got 80% of that pie, right? So they tell me that insanity doesn't mean you're all gone. It just means that you're not quite all here, right? And when it comes to alcohol, sometimes we're not all here. And what we do is we make a decision based upon a lie right? And we're gonna read about that. And when we make a decision based upon a lie, and that has to do with picking up that first drink, that can hit us in the face pretty hard. Things can get pretty awful pretty quick. So let's go to the top of the page. I got the whole darn page highlighted, but I'm not going to have you guys do that. I'll just do a couple. Most of us have been unwilling to admit we were real alcoholics. No person likes to think he is bodily and mentally different from his fellows. So again, right next to that, just write twofold disease, mind and body, right? Twofold disease, mind and body, and they're going to talk about both of those again, just like we did a little bit in the doctor's opinion. So let's underline the next three lines. Therefore, it is not surprising that our drinking careers have been characterized by countless vain attempts to prove we could drink like other people. Just that little thing right there. The idea that somehow, someday, he will control and enjoy his drinking is the great obsession of every abnormal drinker. Okay, highlight the next two lines. The persistence of this illusion is astonishing. Many pursue it into the gates of insanity or death. Okay, so now we're gonna circle the word insanity. Right above, even if you highlight it, circle it. We're gonna circle the word illusion right above insanity. Right above illusion to the left is the word obsession. Circle that too. Okay, circle those three words. Okay, so now we're gonna highlight the whole next paragraph here. We learned that we had to fully concede to our innermost selves that we were alcoholics. This is the first step in recovery. The delusion that we are like other people or presently may be has to be smashed. I'm supposed to crack my book down there, right? So let's also circle the word delusion. Okay, circle the word delusion. And next to that little phrase there, write step 1 instructions. Step 1 instructions. Okay, and we're going to have a lot of ask sponsee stuff here. So whenever I say ask sponsee, when you're taking people through the book, you're going to ask them questions. But you're also going to ask yourself these questions right now as we're going through it. So step 1 instructions, okay, which is that we are like other people has to be smashed, right? We got to concede to our innermost selves. Ask sponsee if they think they have another drink in them. So when you're done reading that smashed, right, you're just going to say, when you're working with somebody, you say, hey, do you think you got another drink in you? Right? So ask sponsee if they think they have another drink in them. If yes, go back to doctor's opinion. So if they say, well, I think maybe, maybe, then go back to the doctor's opinion and reread it, because we have got to hammer home into everybody's consciousness that they are real alcoholics, and to take one drink might kill them. So if yes, go back to doctor's opinion. Step 1 instructions, ask sponsee if they think they have another drink in them. If yes, go back to doctor's opinion. We alcoholics are men and women who have lost the ability to control our drinking. Highlight the next sentence. We know that no real alcoholic ever recovers control. And circle that word ever. All of us felt at times that we were regaining control, but such intervals, usually brief, were inevitably followed by still less control, which led in time, underline, to pitiful and incomprehensible demoralization. Right? That's what happens when we wake up the next morning. Oh my God, I can't believe it. Oh no, oh my God, what? I did it again. We are convinced to a man that alcoholics of our type are in the grip of a progressive illness. Underline progressive illness and then highlight the next sentence. Over any considerable period, we get worse, never better. Okay, so again, after better, write progressive disease. Progressive disease. And man, the two things that really get at the liver and the kidneys and the pancreas, they just take a beating, among other things. That's the physical part, and I'm not talking about the incomprehensible demoralization. At the bottom of the page, let's write honesty is principle behind step 1. Honesty is principle behind step 1. So if we're honest with ourselves, we're seeing that our life isn't working, right? I mean, do we have the power to stop drinking? I mean, do we have the power to hold a job? I mean, do we have the power to stay to be nice to our spouse? I mean, there's many things we don't have the power to do. But the first thing we got to look at is we can't stay sober. We are like men who have lost their legs. They never grow new ones. Neither does there appear to be any kind of treatment which will make alcoholics of our kind like other men. We have tried every imaginable remedy. In some instances, there has been brief recovery, followed always by a still worse relapse. Physicians who are familiar with alcoholism agree. Underline the next sentence. There is no such thing as making a normal drinker out of an alcoholic. You know, I would see my friends drinking, having a couple of beers at the football game, and God darn it, if they can do it, I can do it. But we're different. Science may one day accomplish this, but it hasn't done so yet. Next to the top paragraph, write something off to the right. Don't ever think it's okay to drink. Don't ever think it's okay to drink. And we're going to talk about that little mental blank spot, right? Because when our brain tells us that it's okay for us to take a drink or we deserve a drink, our willpower stops working in that mental blank spot, and then we take that drink, and then the allergy kicks in, and we end up on our ass. Despite all we can say, many who are real alcoholics are not going to believe they are in that class. By every form of self-deception and experimentation, they will try to prove themselves. Underline exceptions to the rule. Okay, just underline that. I'm different. Next to that, write denial. Exceptions to the rule. Denial. Therefore, non-alcoholic. If anyone who is showing inability to control his drinking can do the right about face and drink like a gentleman, our hats are off to him. Underline the next two sentences. Heaven knows we have tried hard enough and long enough to drink like other people. Right? I tried that for years, right? I always thought this time I'll be able to control it. Here are some of the methods we have tried. Drinking beer only. Limiting the number of drinks, never drinking alone, never drinking in the morning, drinking only at home, never having it in the house, never drinking during business hours, drinking only at parties, switching from scotch to brandy, drinking only natural wines, agreeing to resign if ever drunk on the job, taking a trip, not taking a trip, swearing off forever, with and without a solemn oath, taking more physical exercise, reading inspirational books, going to health farms and sanitariums, accepting voluntary commitment to asylums. We could increase the list ad infinitum. So next to that whole paragraph, write how it doesn't work. Do the little brackets and write how it doesn't work. Okay, and right here we've got another instruction. Ask sponsee to fully concede he/she is alcoholic. Right here, we're going to stop and just say, hey, you know, have you tried any of these things? Of course, you're going to ask them. But are you willing to concede to your innermost self that you are alcoholic? So we're going to ask them right here again. Okay? And of course, I forgot something here on the first page we read. I had you circle those three words. Did I have you circle delusion, which is 3 lines under insanity?
Yep.
Okay, so all of those, right, he's talking about the very same thing. All 4 of those terms mean to believe a lie, right? So obsession means a disturbing preoccupation with an idea or feeling. Insanity means foolish, not mentally sound. Illusion means mistaken idea. Delusion means persistent belief in something false. So all 4 of those words mean the same thing. They mean to believe a lie, right? And so when we believe a lie, that's what they're talking about when they say, restore us to sanity. Because we believe a lie that it's okay for us to take that first drink, and it starts that whole thing over again with us. So he's not talking about different things. It's all to believe a lie. Okay, so how it doesn't work, ask sponsee to fully concede he/she is an alcoholic. Right there. We do not like to pronounce any individual as alcoholic, but you can quickly diagnose yourself put a little line, kind of after yourself, and write first test. They're going to give us 2 tests to determine if you're a real alcoholic, right? So where it says step over to the nearest, that's the first test. And next to the paragraph on the bottom, we're going to write something else. We're going to write, let them make the decision if they are alcoholic. Okay, so just write that next to the bottom 4 lines on page 31. Let them make the decision if they are alcoholic. And all of you guys have to decide if you're alcoholic too. Because you know what, man? You can have, for me, it was my parents and my brothers and sisters and my girlfriends and my boss. For years, they all told me I was an alcoholic, but I didn't believe it. So we've got to let them make the decision if they are alcoholic. Okay, so first test. Step over to the nearest bar room and try some controlled drinking. Try to drink and stop abruptly. Try it more than once. It will not take long for you to decide if you are honest, circle honest, right? That's the principle, with yourself about it. It may be worth a bad case of jitters if you get a full knowledge of your condition. So now guys, you got to remember that when this book was written, they didn't have meetings all over the place for people to come to, right? So when people came, the only thing that these guys could do is take them through the steps. And if people were not convinced that they were a real alcoholic, if they did not accept step 1, there was nothing that the recovered alcoholics could do for them, because they didn't have all kinds of meetings they could sit in. So they would say, well, if you're not sure, go out and try this controlled drinking, right? So I do not want anybody here to go out and attempt this, you know. Hopefully you won't. Okay, so let's highlight the next 4 lines. Though there is no way of proving it, we believe that early in our drinking careers, most of us could have stopped drinking, but the difficulty is that few alcoholics have enough desire to stop while there is yet time. Just stop highlighting there. Yeah, if only, right? We have heard of a few instances where people who showed definite signs of alcoholism were able to stop for a long period because of an overpowering desire to do so. Here is one. So draw a little line under desire to do so, and underneath it write first case. We're going to look at 4 cases of people, and these are going to describe the little mental twists or little things that we can tell ourselves and start us drinking after stopping. So first case, and the first case is a man of 30, that's what it's known as. A man of 30 was doing a great deal of spree drinking. He was very nervous in the morning after these bouts and quieted himself with more liquor. He was ambitious to succeed in business, but saw that he would get nowhere if he drank at all. Underline the next little sentence. Once he started, he had no control whatever. So next to that, write physical allergy. Physical allergy. So this guy is still young, he's 30 years old, and my God, once I start drinking, I even if I only want to have 1 or 2, I have no control, right? Physical allergy. He made up his mind that until he had been successful in business and had retired, he would not touch another drop. An exceptional man. That means most of us aren't going to be able to do this. An exceptional man, he remained bone dry for 25 years and retired at the age of 55 after a successful and happy business career. So let's highlight the next 4 lines. Then he fell victim to a belief which practically every alcoholic has, that his long period of sobriety and self-discipline had qualified him to drink as other men. Stop highlighting there. Go back up and circle the word belief. Circle the word belief. Off to the left, in parentheses, write the big lie. In quotation marks, I'm sorry. The big lie. Right? And I mean, some of us, for me, I could be sober a month and I would tell myself that. Right? A couple of times I had 2 months. Once I had 6 months. I can drink as other men, I would tell myself. That is the big lie that we tell ourselves. It's not true. Out came his carpet slippers in a bottle. In 2 months, he was in a hospital, puzzled and humiliated. He tried to regulate his drinking for a while, making several trips to the hospital meantime. Highlight the next line, the next sentence. Then, gathering all his forces, he attempted to stop altogether and found he could not. So, next to that bottom paragraph, write crossed invisible line. This guy crossed the invisible line. And I got to tell you, I don't know if I told you guys, but this guy that I sell tile to, his wife is an alcoholic, and she had been sober 25 years. 25 years. And she was about 50 years old, I believe, and I have no idea why, but she relapsed after 25 years sobriety. What happened over the next 3 years, they sent her to treatment after treatment. I mean, this family was dragged through hell and she could not get it back. She could not get her sobriety back no matter what they tried. And the guys that have taught me, they say that for some reason, and we're not sure why, people that have long periods of sobriety, once they relapse, it's almost impossible for them to come back in here and to stop drinking. So, and I've seen this firsthand, and that's just like this guy, this man of 30, man. Every means of solving his problem, which money could buy, was at his disposal. Every attempt failed. Though a robust man at retirement, he went to pieces quickly and was dead within 4 years. This case contains a powerful lesson. Highlight the next 3 lines. Most of us have believed that if we remain sober for a long stretch, we could thereafter drink normally. I mean, I've seen a lot of people go down that way, and and that was me for 20 years. It was after a month or 2 months or 3 months, I would believe that, and I would drink again. But here is a man who at 55 years found he was just where he had left off at 30. Okay, so we're going to highlight all the way down to immune to alcohol. We have seen the truth demonstrated again and again. Once an alcoholic, always an alcoholic. Commencing to drink after a period of sobriety, we are in a short time as bad as ever. If we are planning to stop drinking, there must, circle must, be no reservation of any kind, nor any lurking notion that someday we will be immune to alcohol. Okay, so right next to that, what we just highlighted, right, ask your sponsee this, right? And all that means is, do you think, that someday that you're going to be able to drink? So we're asking him the same question, or her the same question a few times during this chapter, because we really have to hammer it home in our minds and the minds of the people we're helping that we will never be able to drink safely, ever. Let's see here. 1 minute. So, going back to that man of 30, right? Because it talks about the allergy of the body and the obsession of the mind. In the man of 30, is the real problem in his body, right, which assures that he can't drink safely? Or is it in his mind, which tells him that after 25 years of sobriety, it's okay to take a drink, right? He can drink like other men. Never have we seen a case where an alcoholic can ever be able to drink like a normal man. Once an alcoholic, always an alcoholic, right? So the real problem centers in our mind telling us it's okay to take a drink rather than our body which tells us that which ensures that we can't drink. Young people may be encouraged by this man's experience to think they can stop as he did on their own willpower. We doubt if many of them can do it because none will really want to stop. And hardly one of them, because of the peculiar mental twist already acquired, will find he can win out. Several of our crowd, underline our crowd and just write alcoholics, right? Alcoholics. Men of 30 or less had been drinking only a few years, but they found themselves as helpless as those who had been drinking 20 years. Okay, highlight the next 3 lines. To be gravely affected, one does not necessarily have to drink a long time, nor take the quantity some of us have. This is particularly true of women. Okay, so I remember, man, I was 6 months sober, and I was sitting in a speaker meeting, and this woman was up there talking, and she started drinking at like age 34, and after 1 year, her life was completely a mess, and she ended up in AA. and she didn't drink as much as I did, and I'm thinking to myself, I'm sitting in the crowd thinking, this is ridiculous. She's not an alcoholic, for heaven's sakes, she didn't drink what I drank, she only drank for a year. It's absolutely ridiculous that this woman is up there talking, right? So when I was in Cold Blue 2 months later, and we read through this thing, I remembered what that woman said when she was up talking, and I remembered how she talked about the progression of the disease. I remembered how she talked about how it destroyed her mentally and physically, and the horrible demoralization and hopelessness that she felt. It came back to me like a bell, and I said, my God, that woman was an alcoholic just like me, and here I was sitting there judging her in the crowd, right? So this is particularly true of women. And again, some of us can drink safely for years, but by the time we get into these rooms, we're all alcoholics, so what difference does it make? And some of us go to pieces after 6 months or a year. It simply doesn't matter. Potential female alcoholics often turn into the real thing and are gone beyond recall in a few years. Certain drinkers who would be greatly insulted if called alcoholics are astonished at their inability to stop. We who are familiar with the symptoms see large numbers of potential alcoholics among young people everywhere. But try and get them to see it. Asterisk. True when this book was first published, but a 2007 U.S.-Canada membership survey showed about 1/13 of AAs were 30 and under. Make sure I'm not missing anything here. Back up. As we look back, we feel we had gone on drinking many years beyond the point where we could quit on our own willpower. If anyone questions whether he has entered this dangerous area, just highlight, let him try leaving liquor alone for 1 year. Highlight that and write second test. That's the second test. If he is a real alcoholic and very far advanced, then just highlight the next little line, there is scant chance of success. Right? So that's the second test. So, I'm really not sure if I'm an alcoholic. We'll try not drinking for a year. I got people at work that are obviously alcoholics, but I've been taught that I can't tell that, hey, you're an alcoholic, you got to do this and that. That doesn't work. So I'm like, well, why don't you try not drinking for a year? And they go, well, that's ridiculous. I'm not going to do that. Okay, how about not drinking for 1 month? Well, I can't do that. I've got a party coming up. Okay, how about not drinking for 2 weeks? And a lot of these people say, well, I'm not an alcoholic, so why should I even bother trying this, right? So, just try stopping, for 1 year. And you know what? If you can't do it, that's going to tell you, man, you're a real alcoholic. In the early days of our drinking, we occasionally remain sober for a year or more, becoming serious drinkers again later. Though you may be able to stop for a considerable period, you may yet be a potential alcoholic. Highlight to the end of the paragraph. We think few to whom this book will appeal can stay dry anything like a year. Some will be drunk the day after making their resolutions. Most of them within a few weeks, right? So that's the second test, right? For those who are unable to drink moderately, the question is how to stop altogether. Underline the next sentence. We are assuming, of course, that the reader desires to stop. Okay, so again, off to the left, right? Ask sponsee, do you want to stop for good? Now, I know that we don't drink 1 day at a time, but you know what? If your marriage is falling apart and you just got out of jail, you lost your job, and you cracked up another car, you ought to be able to answer that question. Do you want to stop for good? Right? And even if none of those things have happened, if you've reached the bottom emotionally, you should be able to answer that question. So it's another thing to ask the sponsee and to ask yourselves. Whether such a person can quit upon, underline, a non-spiritual basis. Just that little thing, non-spiritual basis. And then next to it, write own willpower. That's our own willpower. We looked at what happened to us when we tried that in the doctor's opinion, right? Upon a non-spiritual basis depends upon the extent to which he has already lost the power to choose whether he will drink or not. Many of us felt that we had plenty of character. There was a tremendous urge to cease forever. Okay, highlight to the end of the paragraph. Yet we found it impossible. This is the baffling feature of alcoholism as we know it. This utter inability to leave it alone, no matter how great the necessity or the wish. Next to that, write powerless over the disease, or powerlessness over the disease. That describes it. Powerless or powerlessness over the disease. Utter inability to leave it alone no matter how great the necessity or the wish. I'll never forget, John, if you show up drunk for one more Saturday morning meeting, you're fired. Well, the very next Saturday, right? How then, okay, so let's highlight the next two lines. How then shall we help our readers determine to their own satisfaction whether they are one of us? That's the question there, just that little thing. The experiment of quitting for a period of time will be helpful, but we think we can render an even greater service to alcoholic sufferers and perhaps to the medical fraternity. So we shall highlight to the end of the paragraph, describe some of the mental states that precede a relapse into drinking, for obviously this is the crux of the problem. Okay, so highlight that, and then put a little asterisk or underline mental states. Right, so they're going to tell us to the best of their ability what goes on in our heads when we take that drink. What sort of thinking, circle the word thinking, dominates an alcoholic who repeats time after time, underline, the desperate experiment of the first drink. Right? And then off to the right, let's write thinking is his problem or her problem, which thinking is his/her problem. Right? Even though we can't do anything about the allergy of the body, right? So we've got to attack this in our heads. It's the only place we can fight it. Friends who have reasoned with him after a spree, which has brought him to the point of divorce or bankruptcy, are mystified when he walks directly into a saloon. Why does he, underline, of what is he thinking? Okay, so we're going to try to see what we are thinking. Okay, so draw a little line under of what is he, and underneath that write second case, and you can go left a little bit and just circle Jim. Jim is the second case. I love Jim, man. He's a salesman just like me. I love him. Reminds me of me. Our first example is a friend we shall call Jim. This man has a charming wife and family. He inherited a lucrative automobile agency. He had a commendable World War record. He is a good salesman. Everybody likes him. He is an intelligent man, normal so far as we can see, except for a nervous disposition. So, I mean, it won't keep you sober, but he stuttered, right? Except for a nervous disposition. He did no drinking until he was 35. In a few years, he became so violent when intoxicated that he had to be committed. On leaving the asylum, he came into contact with us. So under asylum, you can write treatment center. Treatment center, right? Same thing. They give everything different names. They didn't have places like Hazleton back then, so they sent them to the nuthatch to dry out. Mm-hmm. We, circle we, right? That's the guys working with them. That's the recovered people. We told him what we knew of alcoholism. Okay, so above that, write step 1, allergy/obsession. So they met with Jim, and they told him about the disease of alcoholism. So we told him what we knew of alcoholism. So write step 1, allergy/obsession.
Allergy what?
Allergy/obsession.
Oh, it's that.
Yep. And the answer we had found. Above answer we had found, write step 2. Step 2. So they told him about step 1, and they told him about the solution, step 2. Okay. Underline the next 4 words. He made a beginning. Above, he made a beginning, write 3. A little later on in the book, it's going to tell us that step 3 is but a beginning. So old Jim is doing steps 1, 2, and 3, right? And you can also write 12-step call by that first sentence, because these AA members are out there, they're working with this guy Jim, right? So they were doing a 12-step call, and that's what we do. We cover steps 1, 2, and we try to get them to make a decision when we do our 12-step calls. His family was reassembled. and he began to work as a salesman for the business he had lost through drinking. All went well for a time, highlight, but he failed to enlarge his spiritual life. Just that little bit there. Okay, so old Jim did 1, 2, and 3. Next to what we highlighted, right, he did not do the work / steps, right? He did not do the work / steps. So, and I did that a lot too, man. I do the 1, 2, 3 shuffle. You know, steps 1, 2, 3, drink. 1, 2, 3, drink. 1, 2, 3, drink. But he failed to enlarge his spiritual life. To his consternation, he found himself drunk half a dozen times in rapid succession. On each of these occasions, we worked with him, reviewing carefully what had happened. Now, these are wonderful AA members. He's gotten drunk 6 times in a row, and each time they're going over and saying, okay, Jim, you know, they're recovering steps 1 and 2, and they're looking exactly at what happened, right? I mean, somebody gets drunk 6 times in a row, we get a little bit frustrated, right? But these guys are doing their best. Reviewing carefully what had happened. Okay, highlight the next sentence. He agreed he was a real alcoholic and in serious condition. Next to that, write step 1. So he's got step 1 down. Jim's got 1. He knew he faced another trip to the treatment center, right, to the asylum, if he kept on. Moreover, he would lose his family for whom he had a deep affection. Don't turn the page yet. So we're going to write something at the bottom of the page. Others may be more willing. Come back when you are willing. Others may be more willing. Come back when you are willing. If we've got somebody that is continuously relapsing over and over and they're not willing to do the work, right? They're not willing to go on to the steps after step 3. You know, we're going to say, look, man, this other guy is willing to do the work. Why don't you come back when you're willing to do it too? Others may be more willing. Come back when you are willing. And people had to tell me that a lot because I wasn't willing. I was not willing for many, many years. Yet he got drunk again. Okay, so at the top of the page, let's write HALT, H-A-L-T. And many of you know that's hungry, angry, lonely, tired. H-A-L-T equals hungry, angry, lonely, tired. They tell us that we have to avoid these, particularly when we're in early sobriety. Hungry, angry, lonely, tired. HALT, right? Yet he got drunk again. Okay, so we asked him to tell us exactly how it happened. Highlight that. We asked him to tell us exactly how it happened. And next to that, write, let him talk. And when I say him, that's him or her, obviously. So we're going to, when we go back and we work with somebody after a relapse, we're going to let them talk, right? So we asked him to tell us exactly how it happened. This is his story. Highlight the next 3 lines. I came to work on Tuesday morning. What happened to Monday? We're not good about Mondays, right? I came to work on Tuesday morning. I remember I felt irritated, underline irritated, that I had to be a salesman for a concern I once owned. Okay? So I think that's normal, sane thinking for anybody. If you got to go work for a business that you used to own, I mean, I don't care who you are, you're gonna have a little bit of resentment about that. Then, you know, it's simply the way it is, right? I had a few words with the boss, but nothing serious. Where were you Monday, Jim? Right? Then I decided to drive into the country and see one of my prospects for a car. Right? So that's normal, sane thinking for an alcoholic car salesman. He's going to leave the showroom and go out into the country to try and sell a car. I got to tell you, when I leave my showroom, I never sell a damn thing. If I want to make sales, I got to be in the showroom, right? On the way, I felt hungry. Circle the word hungry. So I stopped at a roadside place where they have a bar, right? Normal, sane thinking for an alcoholic car salesman, right? I'm hungry. They got a bar there. That's beside the point, right? Highlight the next little line. I had no intention of drinking, right? Nah, I'm just hungry, man. I just thought I would get a sandwich, I also had the notion that I might find a customer for a car at this place, which was familiar, for I had been going to it for years. Right? I had eaten there many times during the months I was sober. Right? Normal, sane thinking for an alcoholic car salesman. I sat down at a table and ordered a sandwich and a glass of milk. Still no thought of drinking. I ordered another sandwich and decided to have another glass of milk. Okay, we're going to highlight the next squiggly writing there. Suddenly, right, that means right now, the thought crossed my mind that if I were to put an ounce of whiskey in my milk, it couldn't hurt me on a full stomach. Well, that's absolutely insane. Absolutely insane thinking there, right? I ordered a whiskey and poured it into the milk. I vaguely sensed I was not being any too smart, but felt reassured as I was taking the whiskey on a full stomach. The experiment went so well that I ordered another whiskey and poured it into more milk. That didn't seem to bother me, so I tried another. Okay, after tried another, right, allergy took over. He's got the booze inside him now. There's nothing he can do. Allergy took over. So next to that, paragraph, we're going to write, did not deal with resentment, right? Didn't deal with his resentment. That's only one of the reasons that he got drunk, but that he did not deal with his resentment. Had words with the boss, right? I used to own this place. Of course I can miss Monday. God, who are you to tell me, right? Did not deal with resentment. Now, right above where it says, suddenly the thought crossed my mind, right, go to page 24. Go to page 24. You're going to take your sponsee back there, and we're going to go back to page 24 right now ourselves. So let's go back to page 24, and we are gonna look at the first full paragraph where it says the fact is. Okay, we're just going to read it again. Should be highlighted. The fact is that most alcoholics, for reasons yet obscure, have lost the power of choice and drink. Our so-called willpower becomes practically non-existent. We are unable at certain times to bring into our consciousness with sufficient force the memory of the suffering and humiliation of even a week or a month ago. We are without defense against the first drink. Right? So Jim did not have that. He was without defense, and he went temporarily insane, and he took that drink. And this is after he ended up drunk 6 times in a row and in the asylum. Thus started one more journey to the asylum for Jim. Here was the threat of commitment, the loss of family and position, to say nothing of that intense, highlight the next 5 lines, that intense mental and physical suffering which drinking always caused him. He had much knowledge about himself as an alcoholic, yet all reasons for not drinking were easily pushed aside in favor of the foolish idea that he would take whiskey if only he mixed it with milk. Okay, so let's go backwards to the bottom of page 36 and write, self-knowledge did not help him. Right? The self-knowledge did not help him. He knew that he was severely alcoholic, and he knew about the allergy because he'd been told over and over, but that self-knowledge it was not enough to help him in that mental blank spot that he had, right? So, does the problem exist in Jim's body, right, which assures him that he can't drink, or is it in Jim's mind, which tells him that it's okay to drink whiskey if only you mix it with milk on a full stomach, right? We must attack this problem in our mind, right, rather than our bodies. Whatever the Price definition of the word may be, we call this plain insanity. Underline that, plain insanity. How can such a lack of proportion of the ability to think straight be called anything else? You may think this an extreme case. To us, it is not far-fetched. This kind of thinking has been characteristic. Circle the next 5 words of every single one of us, or 6 words, I guess. Okay. So off to the right, let's write, ask sponsee, has this happened to you? Has this happened to you? And you guys ask yourself if it's happened to you as well. We're really trying to hammer it home. Okay, back to the notes. We have sometimes reflected more than Jim did upon the consequences, but there was always the curious mental phenomenon that parallel with our sound reasoning, there inevitably ran some insanely trivial excuse for taking the first drink. Our sound reasoning failed to hold us in check. Circle the next 5 words. The insane idea won out. Next day we would ask ourselves in all earnestness and sincerity how it could have happened. Right? So again, we're going to ask our sponsee if this has ever happened to him where that insane idea has won out, him or her. Okay, let's highlight the next 3 lines. In some circumstances, we have gone out deliberately to get drunk, feeling ourselves justified by nervousness, anger, worry, depression, jealousy, or the like. So next to that, we're going to write on purpose relapse. On purpose relapse. I'll show you. You can't do that to me. And then we go out and drink poison, right? On purpose relapse. But even in this type of beginning, we are obliged to admit that our justification for a spree was insanely insufficient in the light of what always happened. We now see that when we begin to drink deliberately instead of casually, there was little serious or effective thought during the period of premeditation of what, underline, the terrific consequences might be. Okay, so I mean that's on purpose relapse, and just under that, right? Can you relate again, right? Because we're going to be asking our sponsee, have you ever done that? I mean, when we cover these cases, everyone, we're gonna ask that person we're helping, we're trying to help, if they can relate to any of these, because this is a program of identification. We all come in here and we think that we're different. We think that we have terminal uniqueness. It's going to kill us. Let's draw a line across the page under the terrific consequences might be, and underneath it write third case. Third case. And then we can highlight the next 3 lines, and this is the jaywalker is the third case. So our behavior is as absurd and incomprehensible with respect to the first drink as that of an individual with a passion, say, for jaywalking. By the way, I just got to add this. I'd get home from work and, I'm drinking. I would fill my coffee cup to the brim with Windsor. I would take it down in one swallow and I'd chase it with milk. So I love that story about the milk. But that was just because my throat hurt. He gets a thrill out of skipping in front of fast-moving vehicles. He enjoys himself for a few years in spite of friendly warnings. Up to this point, you would label him as a foolish chap having queer ideas of fun. Right? So this guy is out there, right? He's down on the interstate. He's skipping around these trucks and these cars, seeing how close he can get. Right? Luck then deserts him and he is slightly injured several times in succession. You would expect him, if he were normal, to cut it out. Presently, he is hit again, and this time he has a fractured skull. Within a week after leaving the hospital, a fast-moving trolley car breaks his arm. He tells you he has decided to stop jaywalking for good, but in a few weeks he breaks both legs. So next to that sentence off to the left, just write insane behavior, right, in big letters. That just describes insane behavior. On through the years, this conduct continues, accompanied by his continual promises to be careful or to keep off the streets altogether. Finally, he can no longer work. His wife gets a divorce and he is held up to ridicule. Underline the next line. He tries every known means to get the jaywalking idea out of his head. Highlight that, and off to the left write, not his body. Right? And he shuts himself up in an asylum, hoping to mend his ways. But the day he comes out, he races in front of a fire engine, which breaks his back. Such a man would be crazy, wouldn't he? You may think our illustration is too ridiculous, but is it? We who have been through the ringer have to admit that if we, underline, substituted alcoholism for jaywalking, just that little line, the illustration would fit us exactly. However intelligent we may have been in other respects where alcohol has been involved, underline, we have been strangely insane. Just that line. It's strong language, but isn't it true? So that's all they're talking about. They're talking about that from time to time, we cannot see the truth about alcohol, and we pick up that first drink. Right? And that's why we need that power greater than ourselves to restore us to sanity during those mental blank spots. Because during those times, we do not have the power to withstand these insane thoughts. Some of you are thinking, yes, what you tell us is true, but it doesn't fully apply. We admit we have some of these symptoms, but we have not gone to the extremes you fellows did, nor are we likely to. Underline the next 3 lines. For we understand ourselves so well after what you have told us that such things cannot happen again. Okay, so underline that, and at the bottom of the page write self-knowledge. Self-knowledge. I thought self-knowledge would help me. I knew that I just, if I stayed away from the first drink, I knew I'd be okay. Self-knowledge. We have not lost everything in life through drinking, and we certainly do not intend to. Highlight. Thanks for the information. That was me. Thanks a lot, fellas. I'll see you later. Have fun at those meetings. See you later, guys. Right? So at the top of the page, we're going to write something. Need to live our way to better thinking. Need to live our way to better thinking. Actions first. Need to live our way to better thinking. Actions first. And that's where the sponsor can really help you, right? Can really help you. You call up the sponsor today, I'm going to go back to work, I'm going to punch my boss in the face and quit. Those guys are taking advantage of me. No, whatever you do, you're not going to quit your job. And by the way, you're going to go over there and apologize to that guy what you said to him. And I don't understand why I'm doing all these things, but if I follow this guy's instructions, I'm going to get better. I cannot think my way out of this. I have to take direction from somebody and from this book, and I've got to act my way into better thinking, right? We're opposite people. We got to do things. Every other therapy is going to tell us to change our thinking first and then our actions. Here we got to change our actions first, and hopefully our thinking will follow. That may be true of certain non-alcoholic people who, though drinking foolishly and heavily at the present time, are able to stop or moderate because their brains and bodies have not been damaged as ours were. Highlight the next 3 lines. But the actual or potential alcoholic, with hardly an exception, will be absolutely unable to stop drinking on the basis of self-knowledge. That's a very important one. So off to the left, let's write, let your sponsee diagnose himself, herself. Let your sponsee diagnose himself or herself, right? And then write, knowing this will not save you. You need God. The book is going to tell us over and over again that we've got to get close to God, and if we're able to get close to God, God is going to remove our problem for us. We're not going to be able to remove it ourselves. Right? So the whole idea, and what happened to me, I get closer to God, I try to think I want to try to do what I think God wants me to do. I follow the advice of my sponsor, and I'm not going to have to do what I used to do, right? This is a point we wish to emphasize and re-emphasize to smash home upon our alcoholic readers, as it has been revealed to us out of bitter experience. Circle bitter experience. Let us take another illustration. By the way, going back to that, where does it say it? Back to the jaywalker, right? He tells you he has decided to stop jaywalking for good, right? He's singing our national anthem. I'll never do it again. Never, honey. I promise this time, right? But we can't do it. Okay, so underline across the whole page under another illustration. And under it, write fourth case. Fourth case, and we're going to highlight Fred, right? So, with this jaywalker, though, right? The jaywalker was I'm going to read a couple of notes. The jaywalker was kind of an extreme case, right? Now, because of education, more and more people are getting into these rooms before they lose everything, right? Sometimes people come into these rooms and they're still married, right? Once in a while, somebody comes in here and they still have a job. Just the other day, I saw somebody came in and he still had a car, right? So if we talk to them and we talk about insanity, they're going to say, don't you tell me I'm crazy. I haven't lost anything. I don't live under a bridge. I still have a wife. I got a job. I got a house. Blah, blah, blah. That is not what we're talking about. We're talking about one thing and one thing only. Can you or can you not see the truth about alcohol? If you can see the truth about alcohol, we're sane. If you cannot see the truth about alcohol, we're insane, right? So that might be a little easier for the low-bottom drunk like Jim, right? He lost everything. So right now we're going to see what happens to somebody who's a high-bottom drunk, and that's what Fred is. He's a high-bottom drunk. Fred's never lost anything, right? So Jim was in the dumps when he got drunk. We're going to read about Fred, who was on the top of the world when he got drunk. But they're both going to get drunk the same way. We're going to see they're going to get drunk by believing a lie. So Fred is a partner in a well-known accounting firm. His income is good, he has a fine home, is happily married, and the father of promising children of college age. He has so attractive a personality that he makes friends with everyone. So right next to that, just write high bottom drunk. High bottom drunk. Plenty of low bottom drunks in these rooms, and there's plenty of high bottom drunks. So we're going to highlight the next two sentences. If ever there was a successful businessman, it is Fred. To all appearance, he is stable, well-balanced individual, yet he is alcoholic. Stop highlighting there. Yet he's an alcoholic. We first saw Fred about a year ago in a hospital where he had gone to recover from a bad case of the jitters. It was his first experience of this kind, and he was much ashamed of it. Underline the next two lines. Far from admitting he was an alcoholic, he told himself he came to the hospital to rest his nerves, right? We got plenty of nerve resters in AA, right? I just got to rest my nerves for a little while. Stop highlighting there. The doctor intimated, right, or hinted, the doctor intimated strongly that he might be worse than he realized. For a few days he was depressed about his condition. Okay, we're going to highlight to the end of the page. He made up his mind to quit drinking altogether. It never occurred to him that perhaps he could not do so, in spite of his character and standing. Fred would not believe himself an alcoholic. Okay, so right next to that, write not take step one. Fred would not believe himself an alcoholic. Somewhere in there, write not take step one. Much less accept a spiritual remedy for his problem. Circle spiritual remedy and write don't take one, can't take two. Don't take one, can't take two. Right? You can also write unwilling. At this point, he's unwilling. Fred would not believe himself an alcoholic, not take step one, much less accept a spiritual remedy for his problem. Don't take one, can't take two. We told him what we knew about alcoholism. So above that, just write steps 1 and 2. Steps 1 and 2. Okay? So, they're going to talk about the obsession and the allergy, and they're also, you can write minor war stories. They're going to tell him a couple of war stories at this point. He was interested and conceded that he had some of the symptoms. Okay? We're going to highlight to the end of the paragraph, but he was a long way from admitting that he could do nothing about it himself. He was positive that his humiliating experience plus the knowledge he had acquired would keep him sober the rest of his life. Self-knowledge would fix it. Right? So, Fred is thinking, I'm just a little bit alcoholic, right? But I've been able to conquer every other problem in my life. I can certainly conquer this one. Okay? So, where it says self-knowledge would fix it, off to the left, write not true for the real alcoholic. Not true for the real alcoholic. Remember, we talked about the guy in the Navy, right? Gets out of there, he gets married, has kids, goes to church, and he quits. I said, I quit, why can't you? Well, he's not a real alcoholic. But self-knowledge would fix it, not true for the real alcoholic. We heard no more of Fred for a while. One day we were told that he was back in the hospital. This time he was quite shaky. He soon indicated Underline the next 6 words. He was anxious to see us. Right? He's back in the hospital. He's got the shakes. The story he told is most instructive, for here was a chap absolutely convinced he had to stop drinking, who had no excuse for drinking, who exhibited splendid judgment and determination in all his other concerns. Underline just that little phrase, yet he was flat on his back nevertheless. Right? What the hell's going on, he's thinking. Let him tell you about it. I was much impressed with what you fellas said about alcoholism, and I frankly did not believe it would be possible for me to drink again. Okay, highlight the next 4 lines. I rather appreciated your ideas about the subtle insanity which precedes the first drink, but I was confident it could not happen to me after what I had learned. Okay, so next to that, write self-knowledge again. Self-knowledge. We think that once we know about it, we're okay. Because we've got tremendous willpower and we've conquered all our other problems. Why can't we conquer this? I reasoned I was not so far as advanced as most of you fellas, that I had been usually successful in licking my other personal problems, and that I would therefore be successful, highlight to the end of the paragraph, where you men had failed. I felt I had every right to be self-confident that it would be only a matter of exercising my willpower and keeping on guard. So next to what we just highlighted, write willpower doesn't work. Willpower doesn't work. Okay, so now in the next paragraph, we're gonna do what we did in Bill's story. We're gonna circle all of the I's, right? In this frame of mind, I went about my business, and for a time all was well. I had no trouble refusing drinks, and I began to wonder if I had not been making too hard work of a simple matter. Okay, so right next to that, write dropping his guard. Dropping his guard. Okay? And we can see that Fred is thinking to himself, he's thinking, this staying sober business is easy. It's easy, man. And we can see that his relapse started right here. I've been making too hard work of a simple matter. Let's keep circling the I's. One day, I went to Washington to present some accounting evidence to a government bureau. I had been out of town before during this particular dry spell, so there was nothing new about that. Physically, I felt fine. Neither did I have any pressing problems or worries. My business came off well. I was pleased and knew my partners would be too. Highlight this last sentence. It was the end of a perfect day, not a cloud on the horizon. Everything's going great for old Fred here. Family's good, job is good, partner's happy, business is good, making plenty of money, been out of town before, everything's doing really good. I went to my hotel and leisurely dressed for dinner. Okay, squiggly lines. As I crossed the threshold of the dining room, As I crossed the threshold of the dining room, the thought came to mind that it would be nice to have a couple of cocktails and go back to the hospital. Right? That's the truth. That's the truth. But we can't drink on the truth. We got to drink on a lie, right? So he ain't thinking about the hospital. That it would be nice to have a couple of cocktails with dinner, right? That was all, nothing more. We're going to keep highlighting the I's, right? I ordered a cocktail with my meal, then I ordered another cocktail. After dinner, I decided to take a walk. When I returned to the hotel, it struck me a highball would be fine before going to bed. So I stepped into the bar and I had one. I remember having several more that night and plenty next morning. I have a shadowy recollection of being in an airplane bound for New York and of finding a friendly taxi cab driver at the landing field instead of my wife. The driver escorted me about for several days. I know little of where I went or what I said and did. Underline, then came the hospital with unbearable mental and physical suffering. So next to that paragraph, we can write classic blackout. Classic blackout. And you know what? Not all alcoholics black out. So you know what? If you don't black out, that you're still an alcoholic. Me, I remember, man, I went to a party. I was going to St. John's. I went to a party on a Friday night, and we drank, and I got back on Sunday afternoon, so I could sleep it off and go to class on Monday morning. Well, it wasn't Sunday afternoon, it was Tuesday afternoon, so that did happen to me once. But again, not all alcoholics have to black out. It doesn't happen to all of us. As soon as I regained my ability to think, I went carefully over that evening in Washington. Okay, so we're going to highlight the next 5 lines. Not only had I been off guard, I had made no fight whatever against the first drink. This time I had not thought of the consequences at all. Keep highlighting. I had commenced to drink as carelessly as though the cocktails were ginger ale. Okay, so next to that, again, we're going to write self-will. All right, self-will. It became useless to him because when we see nothing wrong with taking that first drink, our willpower deserts us. Our willpower only helps us when we see something wrong with what we're about to do. I now remembered what my alcoholic friends had told me, how they prophesied, highlight, that if I had an alcoholic mind, the time and place would come. I would drink again. Okay, stop highlighting there. They had said that though I did raise a defense, it would one day give way before some trivial reason for having a drink. Well, just that did happen and more. For what I had learned of alcoholism did not occur to me at all. I knew from that moment that I had an alcoholic mind. Okay, highlight that and you can write step 1. He's got it. Right, step 1. And then highlight the next sentence as well. I saw that willpower and self-knowledge would not help in those strange mental blank spots. Right? And it happens to all of us. I had never been able to understand people who said that a problem had them hopelessly defeated. I knew then it was a crushing blow. Okay, so again, right, step 1 all in there, right? He's finally taken step 1. 2 of the members of Alcoholics Anonymous came to see me. Highlight the next 3 lines. They grinned, which I didn't like so much, and then asked me if I thought myself alcoholic and if I were really licked this time. And double underline, if I were really licked this time, right? So we're asking them, and you got to ask your sponsee, right? You got to say, do you accept step 1? Right? Look at everything that's happened in your life. Because they say that step 1 is the only step that we've got to work perfectly. We've got to understand step 1. We've got to hammer it in our head. I had to concede both propositions. They piled on me heaps of evidence to the effect that an alcoholic mentality such as I had exhibited in Washington, underline, was a hopeless condition. Was a hopeless condition. Okay, and right above there where it says they piled on me heaps of evidence, right next to that, just write war stories. They're going to tell, what they're going to do is they're going to tell how that happened to them over and over again, how they had stopped drinking, and then in one of those mental blank spots they picked up and drank, and what happened to them. They cited cases out of their own experience by the dozen. Okay, highlight to the end of the paragraph. This process snuffed out the last flicker of conviction that I could do the job myself. Okay, so next to that, write self-reliance. So he's finally got it that, hey, I took step 1. I am now going to try that spiritual approach that you guys talked about. So, highlight, then they outline the spiritual answer. Highlight that and write step 2 right in there. Step 2. Okay, keep highlighting. And the program of action. Okay, and then circle action, and somewhere in there write 3 through 12. Right? So Fred's got step 1. They gave him the spiritual answer, and then they gave him the program of action, 3 through 12, which 100 of them had followed successfully. So the 100 people that wrote this book, they took this action and it worked. right? And they're telling Fred this, right? Though I had been only a nominal churchman, their proposals, underline the word proposals, that just means steps, right? That's another word. They use all kinds of words for the steps. Were not intellectually hard to swallow. Okay, underline, but the program of action and circle action, though entirely sensible, was pretty drastic. Okay, so we're going to highlight to the end of the paragraph. It meant I would have to throw several lifelong conceptions out the window. Okay, so next to that, write old ideas. Old ideas. That was not easy. But the moment I had made up my mind to go through with the process, circle process and write all 12 steps. All 12 steps. That's the decision, man. He made the decision. He'd made step 3 right there. I had the curious feeling that my alcoholic condition was relieved, as in fact it proved to be. So, guys, that happened to me, man. When I was going crazy, and this guy told me about Code Blue. He said, "This, if you go to Code Blue and you do this work, it's going to help you." And this guy, I believed him. And when I walked across the threshold into Code Blue for that first time, the exact same thing happened to me, right? I had a curious feeling that things were going to get better. And by God, they did, right? So the process is all 12 steps. Quite as important was the discovery, highlight to the just the sentence, the discovery that spiritual principles would solve all my problems, and circle the word all, right? I came in here just to quit drinking, right? I came in to quit drinking, but you know what, man? I had problem with personal relationships. I couldn't control my emotional nature. I thought I was going to get fired. I was miserable and depressed, right? They would send me home for a few days because I could. So my job, I felt useful. I was fearful. I was unhappy, and I was certainly of no use to other people, right? So these steps are going to actually not just our drinking. They're going to help us with everything in our lives, right? But we got to get rid of our old ideas. I have since been brought into a way of living. Highlight the next 3 lines. Infinitely more satisfying and, I hope, more useful than the life I have lived before. My old manner of life was by no means a bad one, but I would not exchange its best moments for the worst I have now. I would not go back to it even if I could. So next to that, just write promise. That's a promise. That's a promise, right? So, infinitely more satisfying and I hope more useful than the life I lived before, right? So that's what's going to happen to us. So when we come in and we look at these steps, we look at these steps and we go, my God, they're designed to punish me, right? But they're not designed to punish us. They're designed to save us. So what the steps do, the first thing they do is they make life bearable, right? They make it bearable. The next thing they do is they make life tenable. It's tenable. It's like, hey, I can live without drinking. This is possible, right? And then finally, they make it preferable. They say, you know what, man? These steps, my life is now, it's better than it was, so it's preferable to the life I led when I was drinking. That's what the steps are going to do for us. Fred's story speaks for itself. We hope it strikes home to thousands like him. He had only felt the first nip of the ringer. Remember those old ringers that you would put through there, right, at breast height, right? The first nip of the ringer. I remember my mom had one of those. Underlined at the end of the paragraph, most alcoholics have to be pretty badly mangled before they really commence to solve their problems. Okay, so again, next to that, right, high bottom drunk. Fred was high bottom. Most of us, a lot of us anyway, come in here and we're pretty bad off. Many doctors and psychiatrists agree with our conclusions. One of these men, staff member of a world-renowned hospital, won't keep you sober, but it's Dr. Percy Pollack, Pollack, Dr. Percy Pollock. I don't want to offend any Polish people in here. Dr. Percy Pollock, Pollack.
Monkey.
Okay, staff member of a world-renowned hospital recently made this statement to some of us. Highlight the next 3 lines. What you say about the general hopelessness of the average alcoholic's plight is, in my opinion, correct. As to the 2 of you men, whose stories I have heard, I just keep highlighting, there is no doubt in my mind that you were 100% hopeless apart from divine help. And highlight 2 more lines. Had you offered yourself as patients at this hospital, I would not have taken you if I had been able to avoid it. So next to what we just highlighted, let's write, the 2 guys he's talking about are Bill W. and Hank Parkhurst. Hank Parkhurst was a guy, he was the guy that they described the spiritual experience that he totally changed. He helped Bill with the big book. And you can write second doctor's opinion. This is the second doctor's opinion, just like the first one we read a couple weeks ago, right? There is no doubt in my mind that you were 100% hopeless apart from divine help, right? What you say about the general hopelessness is, in my opinion, correct. So that's the second doctor's opinion. There's nothing that science can do to help you guys. You would better find that spiritual experience or you're going to die, right? Second doctor's opinion. Yep.
It was Bill W. and who?
Hank Parkhurst. Parkhurst. And we did, I forget where, but we did write about Hank Parkhurst when we described what a, here, I'll even tell you the page. Let's see if I can find it. They described what a spiritual awakening or experience is. It's somewhere in the back. Anyway, let's see. People like you are too heartbreaking. Though not a religious person, I have profound respect for the spiritual approach in such cases as yours. Okay, highlight. For most cases, there is virtually no other solution. So this is a man of science who is not a religious person, and he's saying science can't help you. There's nothing we can do. Just like Dr. Jung, right, you had better find that spiritual experience. Okay, so let's highlight the next 2 lines. Once more, the alcoholic at certain times has no effective mental defense against the first drink. Okay, highlight that. Now, it says the alcoholic at certain times has no effective mental defense against the first drink. It doesn't say the practicing alcoholic or the drinking alcoholic. It says the alcoholic. That means me. That means you. I don't care how long you've been sober. That's us, right? We do not have the mental defense against the first drink, but if we can get that higher power, then we are going to be able, when these times arise, we're going to be able to see it for what it is. Remember when Bill was in that hotel in Akron, and on one side was the bar, and he heard the tinkling of the glasses, he saw the smoke, the gay chatter, the music, and he thought, I'm going to go in there and scrape up an acquaintance, right, and maybe get a little money so I can get home. And then all of a sudden, boom, it hit him. Oh my God, if I go in there, I'm going to get drunk. Right, so Bill came to his sanity and he went and he got a hold of Dr. Bob eventually. Right, so that's us. Except in a few rare cases, neither he nor any other human being can provide such a defense. Highlight and double underline. His defense must come from a higher power. Okay, so let's write. We're going to write something at the bottom of the page. 66 pages devoted to step 1 till this point. That's counting the preface and the forewords. 66 pages devoted to step 1. So that's telling us they want to hammer it through to us, because again, if we don't take step 1, we can't take step 2, and if we don't do that, we can't go forward, and we're going to drink again. There's no 2 ways about it. So again, it talked about Bill Wilson, self-knowledge didn't help him. Roland Hazard, who talked to Dr. Young, self-knowledge didn't help him. Fred, Self-knowledge didn't help them, right? They all have the obsession of the mind. So these stories tell us one thing. Once an alcoholic, always an alcoholic, and we're going to need a higher power, right? That's what the solution is. We got to get that power. So let us, 8 o'clock, let's end with the third step prayer. And we've got We Agnostics next week. Also one of my favorite chapters. So, third step prayer. God, I offer myself to Thee to build with me and to do with me as Thou wilt. Relieve me of the bondage of self, that I may better do Thy will. Take away my difficulties, that victory over them may bear witness to those I would help of Thy power, Thy love, and Thy way of life. May I do Thy will always. Peace! Thanks, everybody.